The Montana sky burned orange as Jake Morrison leaned against the wooden fence of the Silver Creek Ranch, his weathered hands gripping the rails while his eyes followed the same figure they tracked for 3 years. Emma Walsh moved through the stable yard with practiced grace, her auburn hair catching the dying light like copper fire. She laughed at something old Tom said, and Jake felt that familiar ache spread through his chest. 3 years. 1,095 days of loving her in silence. Jake had been the ranch foreman at Silver Creek when Emma arrived from Boston, a city girl thrust into ranch life after inheriting her late uncle's property. He'd watched her stumble through her first cattle roundup, seen her determination when others doubted she'd last a month. He'd been there in the shadows, fixing what she broke, teaching her ranch hands how to help her without making her feel incapable. But he'd never told her. Never said a word about the way his heart hammered when she walked into a room, or how her smile could turn his worst day into something bearable. You gonna keep staring like a lovesick calf, or you gonna actually do something about it? Tom's gravelly voice broke through Jake's reverie. Jake straightened, pulling his hat lower. Don't know what you're talking about. Son, I've worked ranches for 40 years. I know a man in love when I see one. Tom spat tobacco juice into the dirt. 3 years you've been mooning after that girl. 3 years she's been waiting for you to say something. She doesn't see me that way. You ever ask her? Tom challenged. Jake had no answer. The truth was more complicated than Tom could understand. Emma was building something here, creating a life from the ashes of grief and displacement. She needed stability, support, someone who wouldn't complicate her world. Jake had convinced himself that his silence was a gift, that loving her from a distance was enough. Besides, Emma had suitors. Proper men like David Thornton, the banker's son who came calling every Sunday with flowers and fancy words. Men who wore suits instead of dusty jeans, who could offer her comfort and security without the grime under their fingernails. That evening, Jake stayed late in the north pasture, mending fence line he could have easily left for tomorrow. Anything to avoid the empty cabin where his thoughts grew too loud. The moon had risen full and bright when he finally headed back, taking the long route past the main house. Emma sat on her porch swing, wrapped in a shawl, staring at the stars. She looked so alone it made Jake's chest constrict. He almost walked over, almost closed the distance that had yawned between them for 3 years. His boots scraped gravel and she turned, her green eyes finding him in the darkness. Jake? That you? Yes, ma'am. Just heading back. Didn't mean to disturb you. You're not disturbing me. She stood, moving to the porch rail. Actually, I was hoping to talk to you. Got a minute? Every minute I have is yours, he thought. Sure thing. He climbed the porch steps, maintaining a respectful distance. Up close, he could see the worry lines creasing her forehead. I got a letter today. From a cattle buyer in Denver. He wants to purchase a third of my herd, but I need to deliver them within 2 weeks. She bit her lip, a habit that never failed to make Jake's resolve weaken. I don't know if I can manage it. The trail's rough this time of year, and I'd need experienced hands. I'll take them. The words were out before he could stop them. Jake, it's a hard drive. 10 days minimum, maybe more with the weather turning. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. His voice came out rougher than intended. I know every trail between here and Denver. I can get your cattle there safe. They left at dawn 3 days later with 40 head of cattle and 3 ranch hands, young Pete Harrison, grizzled Tom, and Miguel Santos, who'd worked cattle drives since he was 15. Emma had insisted on coming too, despite Jake's protests. It's my herd, Jake. My responsibility, she'd said with that stubborn set to her jaw he'd learned meant arguing was useless. So now she rode beside him, sitting her horse with improving confidence, and Jake tried to focus on the trail ahead instead of her presence beside him. The Montana wilderness stretched endlessly around them, rolling hills giving way to dense pine forests and rocky mountain passes. The first 2 days passed without incident. They fell into an easy rhythm, up before dawn, long hours in the saddle, evening camp where they shared stories around the fire. Jake found himself talking more than he had in years, drawn out by Emma's genuine curiosity about his life, about ranching, about everything. "Tell me something," Emma said on the third night as they sat watching the cattle settle. The others had turned in, leaving them on first watch. "Why did you become a rancher?" Jake considered the question, watching embers spiral toward the stars. "My daddy was a foreman, like me. Died when I was 16, thrown from a horse. Everyone expected me to leave, find something safer. But ranching." He struggled for words. "It's honest work. The land doesn't lie to you. Cattle don't pretend to be something they're not. There's a purity in it. I'm starting to understand that." Emma pulled her coat tighter. "When I first came here, I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. I didn't know a thing about ranches or cattle or any of this. But you." She turned to him, her eyes reflecting firelight. "You made it possible. You and Tom and the others. You never made me feel foolish, even when I was. You were never foolish. Just learning. There's a difference." They sat in comfortable silence until Emma spoke again, softer now. "David asked me to marry him. Last week." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He kept his face neutral, his voice steady. "That so? What did you tell him?" "I asked for time to think." She drew patterns in the dirt with a stick. "He's a good man. Stable, responsible. He could give me a good life. But..." Jake heard the hesitation in her voice. "But I don't love him." The admission came out barely above a whisper. "I respect him, enjoy his company. But when he kisses me, I feel nothing. Shouldn't I feel something?" Jake's hands clenched. The thought of David Thornton kissing Emma made him want to put his fist through something. "You deserve to feel everything," he said, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't quite contain. Emma turned to look at him, really look at him, and something shifted in the air between them. "What about you, Jake? You ever been in love?" The question hung there, dangerous and tempting. This was his moment, his chance to speak the truth that had lived in his heart for 3 years. But old fears rose up. What if he wasn't enough? What if his feelings complicated her life, made their working relationship impossible? What if she laughed, or worse, pitted him? "Once," he said finally, the coward's answer. "Long time ago." The moment passed. Emma nodded and looked away, and Jake hated himself for his silence even as he told himself it was for the best. The fourth day brought trouble. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, and by noon they were caught in a violent thunderstorm. Lightning cracked across the sky, sending the cattle into a panicked stampede. Jake shouted orders, sending Pete and Miguel to flank the herd while he and Tom tried to get ahead and turn them. "Emma, stay back." Jake yelled, but she was already spurring her horse forward. What happened next felt like slow motion. Emma's horse stumbled on the slick ground, throwing her hard. She landed in the path of the stampeding cattle, and Jake's heart stopped. Without thinking, he drove his horse straight into the herd, scattering cattle, reaching Emma just as hundreds of pounds of panicked beef bore down on them. He grabbed her around the waist, hauling her onto his horse as hooves thundered past them. They made it clear by inches, Jake's horse heaving beneath them as they stumbled to safety. He held Emma against his chest, feeling her heart race against his own pulse roaring in his ears. "You could have been killed," he said, his voice shaking with fear and anger and something else entirely. Emma pulled back to look at him, rain streaming down her face. "You could have been too. Why did you do that?" They lost half a day rounding up the scattered cattle. By the time camp was set that evening, everyone was exhausted, bruised, and short-tempered. Emma had twisted her ankle in the fall, and though she insisted she was fine, Jake could see her favoring it. "Let me look at that," he said after dinner, gesturing to her foot. "It's nothing. Emma." He used his foreman voice, the one that meant he wouldn't be argued with. "Let me look." She sighed and extended her leg. Jake knelt before her, carefully removing her boot. His hands, so large and work-roughened, were impossibly gentle as he examined her ankle. It was swollen but not badly injured. "You need to stay off it tomorrow," he said, rewrapping it with clean cloth. "Ride in the supply wagon with our gear." "Jake, I can ride. I won't slow us down." "It's not about that." He looked up at her, still kneeling, still holding her foot in his hands. "You scared me today. When I saw you fall, when I saw those cattle running at you." He stopped, unable to continue. "Why does it matter so much to you?" Her voice was quiet, intense. "Why did you risk yourself like that? Any foreman would have told me it was my own fault for being reckless. Let me face the consequences." "You know why?" "No, I don't. That's the problem, Jake. I don't know anything about what you think or feel because you never tell me. 3 years we've worked together, and I feel like I barely know you." The dam inside Jake cracked. 3 years of silence, of swallowed words and buried feelings, pressed against his chest until he could hardly breathe. "You want to know why?" He stood abruptly, pacing away from her. "Because I'm in love with you. I have been since the day you arrived at Silver Creek, covered in dust from the road, trying to look confident when I could see you were terrified. I'm in love with the way you refused to give up when everyone said a city girl couldn't run a ranch. I'm in love with your laugh and your stubbornness and the way you treat every person on that ranch like family." Emma stared at him, speechless. Jake continued, the words pouring out like water through a broken dam. "I've loved you every single day for 3 years, and I haven't said a word because I'm just the foreman. I'm the hired hand who smells like horses and cattle, who doesn't know the difference between a salad fork and a dinner fork. You deserve someone like David Thornton, someone who can give you fancy dinners and clean hands and a life without struggle." "Stop." Emma stood, wincing as she put weight on her injured ankle. "Just stop talking." She crossed to him, closing the distance he'd maintained so carefully for so long. Her hands came up to frame his face, and Jake stopped breathing. "You stupid, wonderful man," she whispered. "You think I care about salad forks? You think I want clean hands and fancy dinners? Emma, I'm in love with you too." The words burst out of her. "I have been for over a year, maybe longer. Why do you think I insisted on coming on this drive? Why do you think I keep finding reasons to ask your opinion, to keep you close? I've been waiting for you to see me, really see me, but you've been so determined to keep your distance." Jake's world tilted. "You're in love with me?" "Yes, you infuriating man. When David kisses me, I feel nothing because he's not you. No one will ever be you." Jake lifted shaking hands to her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I don't deserve you. That's not your decision to make." Emma rose on her toes, her lips inches from his. "Kiss me, Jake Morrison. Stop loving me from afar and just kiss me." He did. 3 years of longing poured into that kiss, 3 years of unspoken words and secret glances and a love that had grown deep roots in silence. Emma melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and Jake held her like she was precious, like she was everything, because she was. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "I still think you deserve better. I deserve someone who sees me for who I am. Someone who believes in me even when I don't believe in myself. Someone who would ride into a stampede to save me." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I deserve you, and you deserve me. Can we agree on that?" "Yes, ma'am." He kissed her again, softer this time. "We can agree on that." From across the camp, Tom's voice drifted over, "About damn time." They broke apart laughing, and for the first time in 3 years, Jake felt the weight lift from his chest. No more silence. No more distance. Just Emma in his arms, where she belonged. The rest of the drive to Denver passed in a blur of new intimacy and discovered joy. Jake and Emma rode side by side, no longer maintaining careful distance. They talked about everything, their pasts, their dreams, the future they might build together. At night, they sat close around the fire, Emma's head on Jake's shoulder, his arm around her waist. The ranch hands pretended not to notice, though Tom's knowing grins gave him away. "You think the boss will be happy about this?" Young Pete asked Tom one evening as they watched Jake and Emma walk the perimeter together. "Son, those two were making everyone miserable with their pining. Trust me, everyone will be thrilled they finally figured it out." They reached Denver on schedule, delivering the cattle to the buyer for a fair price. Emma handled the negotiations with growing confidence, and Jake stood beside her, proud and supportive. She didn't need him to save her or speak for her, she needed him as her partner, and that made all the difference. Their last night before heading home, they walked through Denver streets, Emma's hand tucked into Jake's arm. They were an odd pair, her in a simple dress, him in his ranch clothes, both of them looking out of place among the city's finery. But neither cared. "I need to tell David," Emma said as they paused outside their hotel. "It's not fair to leave him hoping. I'll come with you, when we get back. If you want." "I'd like that." She squeezed his arm. "Jake, what happens now? We work together. I'm technically your employer. People will talk. Let them talk." Jake stopped, turning to face her. "Emma, I don't care what people think. But I do care about doing this right. I'm not much for fancy words or romantic gestures, but I know what I want. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build that ranch together, make it something neither of us could have made alone. I want forever with you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Is this your way of proposing?" "Not yet." Jake smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "When I propose, it'll be proper. I'll get a ring, find the right moment, do it right. This is just me telling you my intentions, so you know where I stand." "I know where you stand." Emma pulled him down for a kiss. "You stand with me. Always have, even when I didn't know it. Even when you wouldn't let yourself admit it." They returned to Silver Creek a week later, the whole ranch turning out to greet them. News of their relationship had apparently preceded them, Tom had sent word ahead, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. The ranch hands clapped Jake on the back and teased him about finally getting brave enough to court the boss. True to his word, Jake accompanied Emma to David Thornton's house. The banker's son took the news with grace, though disappointment showed clearly on his face. "I hope he makes you happy," David said, shaking Jake's hand with genuine good wishes. "Take care of her." "Every day of my life," Jake promised. The weeks that followed were a revelation for Jake. He'd spent so long hiding his feelings that openly loving Emma felt like learning to breathe again. They were careful around the ranch, maintaining professionalism during work hours, but evenings found them on her porch swing, talking and planning their future. Jake courted her properly, the way she deserved. Sunday rides through the mountains, picnics by Silver Creek, and stolen kisses in the barn when no one was looking. He'd spent 3 years learning everything about her from a distance, now he got to discover the details, how she hummed while doing paperwork, the way she bit her lip when concentrating, the soft sound she made when he kissed the sensitive spot below her ear. 2 months after their return from Denver, Jake rode into the mountains alone, heading for the highest peak overlooking Silver Creek. Emma didn't know where he'd gone, only that he'd be back by evening. He sat on that peak, looking down at the ranch they both loved, the land stretching endlessly in all directions. In his pocket sat a simple gold band with a small diamond, nothing fancy, but honest and real, bought with money he'd saved for years without knowing what he was saving for. Now he knew. This moment. This question. This life he wanted to build. That evening, Jake returned to find Emma sitting on her porch swing, worry creasing her features. She stood when she saw him, relief flooding her face. "Where were you?" "I was worried." "Come with me." He extended his hand. "There's something I want to show you." He led her to the stable, to a mare he'd been secretly training for weeks. The horse was beautiful, a chestnut with a white blaze, gentle-eyed and strong. "Jake, she's gorgeous." "Is she new?" "She's yours. I've been training her special, just for you." He helped Emma into the saddle, then mounted his own horse. "Now come on. There's one more thing." He led her to the high meadow where he'd first seen her 3 years ago, the place where his silent love had begun. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. He dismounted and helped her down, his hands lingering on her waist. "Jake, what's this about?" He took a breath, gathering courage. Facing stampeding cattle had been easier than this moment. 3 years ago, I stood in this meadow and watched you try to herd cattle for the first time. You were terrible at it. Emma laughed, and he smiled. But you didn't quit. You kept trying, kept learning. I fell in love with you that day, I think, and I've loved you every day since. I just wasn't brave enough to tell you. He dropped to one knee, pulling out the ring. Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. I wasted 3 years loving you in silence, Emma Walsh. I don't want to waste another day. Will you marry me? Will you let me love you out loud for the rest of our lives? Yes. The word came out choked with tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Jake slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. She was crying, laughing, kissing him all at once, and Jake thought his heart might burst with joy. I love you, he murmured against her hair. From afar, up close, and every way in between. Always have, always will. I love you too. Emma pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining. My silent cowboy who finally found his voice. They were married 6 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by their ranch family. Tom served as Jake's best man and made a speech about stubborn fools who took 3 years to figure out what everyone else already knew. Everyone laughed, including Jake and Emma, because it was true. As Jake slipped the wedding band onto Emma's finger and promised to love and cherish her all the days of his life, he thought about those 3 years of silence. Part of him regretted the time lost, the words unspoken. But another part understood that those years had built something solid, something real. His love for Emma wasn't a flash fire of passion that would burn bright and die fast. It was deep and strong, rooted in respect and friendship and genuine understanding. And now, finally, it was spoken. Said out loud every day, in words and actions, in the life they were building together. That night, as they danced under the Montana stars, Emma whispered in his ear, "Thank you for waiting for me. For being patient. For loving me even when it was hard." Jake held her closer. Loving you was never hard. The hardest part was staying quiet about it. But I promise you, Emma Morrison, I will never be quiet again. I'll tell you I love you every day for the rest of our lives. You better, she said, smiling up at him. Because I'll never get tired of hearing it. And he kept that promise. Every single day, for all the years that followed, Jake told Emma he loved her. Out loud, where she could hear it, the way she deserved. His 3 years of silence had ended, and what began in their place was so much better, a lifetime of spoken love, shared dreams, and the beautiful noise of a life lived together. The Montana sky stretched endlessly above Silver Creek Ranch, and under it, 2 hearts that had finally found their voice beat as one.